Well, it's the moment you've been waiting for. Even a Gavin Newsom stalwart like Bill Maher could not help but call out the blatant hypocrisy of the Californian governor as he reverses many of his policy positions to possibly prepare for a presidential run. Watch how he stopped Gavin in his tracks over one particular issue that put California on the map for how far left it had gone on something like the transgender debate.
So what do you say to people who say, well, this sounds all very good, but Governor, you were the poster boy for a lot of this stuff. I see today the Trump administration they talked about, I don't know if this is true, but they talked about the fact that California had a rule that schools cannot be required to notify parents if their kids in school have changed their gender, their pronouns. That's the kind of thing, even though it doesn't affect a lot of people, that makes a lot of people go, well, you know what? That's the party without common sense. Now, if that's your state, how are you?
Well, I just disagree with that. I mean, the law was you would be fired. A teacher would be fired if a teacher did not report or snitch on a kid talking about their gender identity. I just think that was wrong. I think teachers should teach. I don't think they should be required to turn in kids. And by the way,
we're talking about their parents. How can you snitch? The idea of a snitch and a parent to me doesn't compute.
Well, I don't. But what is the job of a teacher? It's to teach. If Johnny's talking about some identity issue or some issue about liking someone of the same sex, is the teacher's job to then report that? By the way, in this law, the teacher can still do that, but they can't be fired if that's it can't be fired if that's not what they do. And that's something I think I just think that was fair.
Wait, what? That position still sounds way far left to the majority of the country, and Gavin Newsom is still taking heat from his party for it? Remember, California under him has been a case of a state spiraling unchecked to the left, and you see that with unprecedented policies like the so-called Safety Act that the same governor signed into law last year, allowing schools to withhold information from parents about their children over trans identification. Not just that, this is the same state that even went as far as prohibiting voter ID mandates in local government elections. This is about as far left as you could go. And Gavin Newsom taking a single step away from that is getting him canceled and ridiculed by Democrat establishment and media pundits, which tells you where their head really is at. By the way, we've got our eyes where the mainstream media refuses to look, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell to become part of the conversation. Now, what's even crazier is that while Gavin tries to do this new balancing act, the mere fact that he's getting backlash for speaking to conservatives on his new podcast should wake him up to the ideological bubble he's surrounding himself with for so long.
It's really been interesting, the reaction to the podcast. I mean, we had some controversial figures on, I'll acknowledge that, and Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and some others. But you're right. I mean, this idea that we can't even have a conversation with the other side.
You have to. They won.
Thank you. That's it. Bottom line. And by the way, or the notion we just have to continue to talk to ourselves or we're in the same damn echo chamber. These guys are crushing us. The Democratic brand is toxic right now. We had a high water mark 2 weeks ago, and that was a CNN poll at 29% favorability. It's dropped in the NBC poll down to 27%. It's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense. And I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots. I'm not looking to put a spoke in the wheel of their, or at least a crowbar in the spokes of their wheel to trip them up, to your point. And I think it's important. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should be. This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature about this.
Can you tell me why does he speak like he's not been the governor of such an important state for over half a decade and one of the loudest Democrat voices? And right now, the fact that there's a staggeringly low 27% approval rating for the Democrats, or that nearly 80% of even Democrat voters say they disapprove of the inclusion of trans athletes in women's sports, means he'll have to do a lot more to meet his base in the middle. And it's interesting how even someone like Bill Maher couldn't stop asking Gavin Newsom to run for president not long ago, is starting to see that this supposed political shift to the center left is too little too late, especially now after the election. Besides, it's not like people at large don't remember that he's been the poster child for a lot of those far left policies in California. And even a network like CNN recently exposed the governor when he pretended to have never used or understood a term like Latinx.
So let's talk about the word Latinx. Just 2 weeks ago, here's what he said about it.
By the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree?
where did that even
No
come?
more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
But there was a person who used Latinx. It was actually a really important person. It was him.
I hope we can really paint a picture in terms of our consciousness of how impactful this has been on the Latinx community. The Latinx and Black communities. You've got politicians that are banning not assault rifles, but the word Latinx. They're not even serious.
And look, Aaron, those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that phrase.
So here's the problem for Gavin Newsom right now. As Charlie Kirk said after meeting him, Gavin wants to be president more than anything else, but while the rest of the country has swung rightward in this election, both politically and culturally, it's going to be a very difficult balancing act for whether he can offset the old far-left crowd he loses with the new center-left base that he hopes to gain with this rhetorical shift. I don't know if it's going to be that easy, especially after the absolute PR disaster that these recent wildfires have been for the governor. And it's truly insane that Gavin Newsom is acting like a moderate while adopting new policy positions that would still be considered way to the left of the Overton window, even for the Democrats just 20 years ago. And maybe that tells you that it's not going to be a successful shift for him after all. You see that here as well with Bill Maher taking him to task for absurd levels of overregulation in California that we've seen push out big businesses as well as a lot of people that were just done with the government constantly breathing down their neck.
But let's talk about what's important. My roof.
Your roof.
My roof.
Is this the solar? We're back to the solar?
After the fire.
It's always about the solar.
After the fire.
Yes, Bill.
New roof. They suggested, get the stuff that's not, okay. 2 inspections I needed to have. Why? It's my roof. If it falls on my head, that's my problem.
That's it?
That's it.
That's just a statement.
No, that's my question. Why do I need 2 inspections, which I have to pay for?
Yeah.
You were here last time. We talked about regulations. You said, oh, it's a completely new day.
Well, no, wait.
That's a quote from you. Completely new day.
Well, I mean,
you said you were working on it.
By the way, and last week you had Ezra Klein on, which was incredibly important. He wrote a book called Abundance, which really lays out a very condemning picture of liberal governance in this country and the fact that we are process-focused and not outcome-focused. And you're a demonstrable example of that as relates to what you've tried to do with your damn roof for the last 15 years. And so it's our job to eliminate as many of those thickets
How's that going, though?
as possible.
That's what happens when you got a state where businesses face as many as 400,000 pieces of regulation that no one can track or follow to the letter, and nothing that Gavin Newsom has done in his 6 years of heading California has worked to reverse that. So until these words are followed by actions, I don't think anyone's buying it. But tell me in the comments what you think the future holds for him, because we're already seeing the Democrats start to look for a new party face for 2028.